House Money Fantasy, HMFers, how's it going? Had a ton of audio issues yesterday. First, my internet went out. Then I did a whole entire broadcast with my microphone muted. It's going to be real quick. It's a solo show. I don't have TJ with me today. It's just going to be a quick breakdown here of who I like for today's 8-game slate. The only weather issues we're going to have to worry about today is the St. Louis game. So, again, pay attention to weather. We had a game yesterday get postponed. The Tigers and White Sox game was postponed. So, again, make sure you're paying attention to those things. We got to, you don't want to leave those guys in your lineups because you're guaranteed to lose. The highest game total for today is Giants Diamondbacks at 9, and a couple in the 8 range. So let's just jump right into it because I actually got to get going here. So pitchers, my top pitcher for tomorrow is Lance McCullers. He only played 14 games last season with 11.78 K9 ratio. And that's up from 9.24 in 2015. I have a feeling if he played the full season, though, that would have came down. But he's still going to be a high strikeout guy, somewhere in the 9 to 10 range. Seattle was 14th in strikeout rate last season, just shy of 8 strikeouts per game. So I'm expecting 8 to 10 strikeouts from McCullers here. The next guy on here is Carlos Carrasco, who's averaging 9.74 strikeouts over 9 innings his last 3 seasons. And then my final pitcher here is Kenta Maeda, who was 15th last season in strikeouts with 9.17 per 9 innings. And he's got an xFIP of 3.7 with a matchup against the Padres, who was the second worst team in strikeouts last year. That showed again this season in their first game against Clayton Kershaw, who, if I remember correctly, threw 11 strikeouts. So he's definitely in play. He also has the highest projected chance of winning at minus 211 over the Padres. So definitely look at him. A couple other guys just to mention I'm not really high on, though, is Jake Arrieta going up against St. Louis, who is pretty high in strikeouts. And then who was the other one that I liked? Johnny Cueto was another one. I'm not as high on him just because it's a high run total. It has the highest game total of the day at 9. And right now they're projecting 4 runs for the Diamondbacks, and they have some power. So I'm kind of staying away from him. Kind of a off chance play here is Adam Wainwright against the Cubs. I'll get into my game stacks here in a minute, and I'll kind of hint here that the Cubs are one of them. So if this game does go, the wind is going to be blowing in here. So that might help with the home runs against the Cubs, and kind of goes against why I like them for a game stack. But Wainwright, he's not a big strikeout pitcher. He averages about 7 strikeouts per 9 innings. But the Cubs are one of the worst strikeout teams last year, and they showed it again this first game here against the Cardinals on Sunday. And I can just see Wainwright sneaking in with like 8 to 9 strikeouts. The only thing that worries me is the win. If you can't get the win, then that's going to hurt. Right now, the Cubs are favored with minus 134 money line. So, yeah, I guess that's it for pitchers. Going into my game stacks, like I mentioned, I like the Cubs. And if you're going to target anyone against Wainwright, you're going to go with the left-handed bats here. So you're going to look at Schwarber. You're going to look at Anthony Rizzo. You're going to look at Zobrist. I actually still like Chris Bryant in that stack as well. It's going to get kind of pricey, though. So if you need a kind of cheaper contrarian guy to stack to make it a 4 stack, I like Wilson Contreras here, even though he's a righty. Let's see. I had a couple other notes here on this. So Wainwright, he's got a 4.06 xFIP, not the greatest, and he tends to walk batters. He walks about 2 per game, And I just think the Cubs kind of bounced back here after that disappointing first game performance. And against lefties is 4.45 xFIP. So as you can see, it's definitely not as good for lefties for Wainwright. The team I really like, though, today for a stack is the Astros. This should be a great matchup for Houston. Hisashi Iwakuma is averaging 1.27 home runs per 9 innings. He actually fares a little bit better against lefties, but not by much. It's almost an even type split. Almost everyone is in play here. As Iwakuma has kind of lost his velocity. He's a lot older than what people realize because he came into the league late. I'm going to be targeting 1 through 5 hitters here, and then as an optional cheap play, Brian Mechanic, catcher. He's got power. He hit 20 home runs last year, and at 2.6K on FanDuel, I think he can be a one-off type catcher. So going through this, I'm just going to go through the games real quick here. So if we're going to target any of the Yankees, I'm not really a big fan of game stacking the Yankees here. They're only projected for about 3.5 runs. But if you're going to go against Jake Odorizzi, you're going to want to target right-handed bats. So the only people that stand out here are Gary Sanchez, who went 0 for 5 in the first game, so hopefully he can bounce back here. Matt Holliday has some power, and then I do like Starlin Castro a little bit at 2.5K on FanDuel at second base. Flipping the script here, going against Sabathia, I'm really looking at Evan Longoria. I don't like a game stack here for Tampa. I know they did well in the first game. I don't know. Just something about that team. I don't trust really much of their lineup here. Evan Longoria is the only one that jumps out. Righties are who you want to target against Sabathia. So I guess Steven Souza is kind of in play at the top of the lineup, but he's not as much of a power hitter as I would like. But you got Brad Miller, who's a lefty, so that's kind of weakens this his chances there. The Colorado Rockies game stack is kind of in play here. They have a lot of power on that team going up against Zach Davies. You're going to want to target righties against him. So Nolan Arenado is in play. Trevor Story is in play. Those guys have some power. I'm still going to look at Charlie Blackmon and Cargo as possible game stacks here. And if you needed somebody cheaper, because again, those guys can get kind of pricey, you can look at LeMahieu. Going up against Tyler Anderson, you're going to want to also target righties for him. Pretty big splits. You're going to look at Ryan Braun and Hernan Perez. So we talked a little bit about Carlos Carrasco. I'm not going to be targeting anyone on the Rangers. I know Odor had a really good game. Lucroy had a decent game. They have some power there, so you can possibly look at them if you're not playing Carrasco. But I'm just not a fan here. I'd rather play the Cleveland Indians side, where you're going to look at playing Edwin Encarnacion. You're going to look at playing Carlos Santana and Francisco Lindor. Those are the 3 guys that jump off right at me. Going to the next game, we got the Mariners, like we already talked about, against Houston. I am definitely looking at the Houston stack. The only one that jumps out at me a little bit on the Seattle side is going to be Nelson Cruz, but again, I'm not really going to be playing anyone from there. I already mentioned for the Cubs St. Louis game about where we could go with that. If you are going to look at St. Louis against Jake Arrieta, you're going to want to look at playing Matt Carpenter, the lefty, and then possibly Dexter Fowler at the top of the lineup. Those are the only 2 guys I'm interested here, as Arrieta struggles against lefties. Johnny Cueto against Patrick Corbin. The San Francisco Giants stack is kind of in play here. You're going to want to look at playing Hunter Pence, Buster Posey. Those 2 guys jump off the board at me. They have too many left-handed bats here. Corbin is really bad against righties. If you wanted to play a stack for the Diamondbacks, you're going to want to look at Paul Goldschmidt. You're going to want to look at A.J. Pollock. You're going to want to look at Tomas, who burnt me the first day on Sunday. And then Drury's got some power too at times, but I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of that stack, but those Pollock, Goldschmidt, and Pollock and Goldschmidt and Tomas, I guess, would be the 3 I look at if you're going to go 3 there, as righties are better against Cueto. For For the Angels, not really game stacking this, but if you're going to look at putting anybody together, it's going to be Trout, Pujols, and CJ Cron. Chaminade is not as good against righties as he is lefties. Then you flip the script for Matt Shoemaker going up against the Athletics. Rajai Davis, I like him, but only against lefties, so I'm not playing him here. Stephen Voit hit a home run the first game. He probably isn't going to do it again, but he's going to be a guy you can play as a lefty versus righty here. That's about it for me there. And then in the last game, I'm looking at Maeda, especially on DraftKings. I think he's a little bit of a lower price guy you can use. Probably going to pay up here pitcher on DraftKings for the two pitchers and finding some value plays late with my hitters. But we're going to go with the Padres. The only guy I like here is Will Myers, and that's just a one-off. Probably not going to be playing him. But you could do a Dodger stack like we saw here today. Jack Peterson is not in play, though, here as a lefty against lefty, so I'm not looking at using him. Again, I apologize. This was short. We had a lot of audio issues, and yeah, that's it for House Money Fantasy. Follow us on Twitter, House Money DFS. And I love you, Tristan and Logan, if you're going to be able to watch this. And that's it. See you guys hopefully tomorrow. One of us or two of us will be here. Have a good one. Good luck tonight.